Hi, Stephanie. Sorry for
Hello.
being a little bit in delay, but today, is a very dense.
Well, you're quite on time, and by my clock, only 2 minutes. So
Okay, how are you? Everything's fine there?
everything's good. We're just starting a new day here in Silicon Valley.
Oh, yeah. Yes, we entitle your this interview with Voice from Silicon Valley. So
It's a good title. It's accurate.
But it's really a pleasure, because we met digitally a few months ago, and it was a pleasure to talk with you and also to share what you are doing, for example, with the UCSF in the University of California on entrepreneurship, and with the masterclass global masterclass that you run. So. But let's start from the beginning. So, first of all, I would like you to introduce yourself and to tell us something about your experience and what you do in the Silicon Valley.
Sure, happy to do that. And buona notte, everybody. It's very an honor to be included in this conference from Milano, and I hope to come sometime soon. So my background is business and not university. For those who don't know the University of California, San Francisco, we are the major life science healthcare university in the United States. We're part of the University of California system, which includes Berkeley, which almost everyone's heard of. But we're quite distinct. We have only graduate programs in science and medicine, and are well recognized for our medical care, our clinical care, as well as our scientific research. We have 6 Nobel laureates. We just got a new one last month for our scientific research. So that's where I am now, and I'll tell you a bit about my program here. But before that, I was in business, private sector business, sometimes public companies, sometimes startup companies, and doing a number of business roles, including CEO, Chief Operating Officer, Vice President of Business Development, things of that sort. So on the business side, my background is an MBA from the Wharton School, University of Pennsylvania, and a master's degree from Columbia University. I spent 10 years in the tech sector around Boston, and then in the 90s, I moved over into the biotech sector, and first was in Boston, and now I'm in San Francisco in Silicon Valley. So I guess that's a quick summary of me.
I have my microphone is on now. So, and that we have there is the sort of myth of the Silicon Valley. So when we talk about startups and investment and so on, and from your point of view, and since you are there and so you are part of this ecosystem, how do you see, how you can tell us, for example, which are the main pillars of this ecosystem? Why is it so attractive in your opinion, and what's going on there now?
Yeah, sure. What I left out from my summary of what I do is that I run the entrepreneurship program at UCSF. So why is Silicon Valley so well known globally, and why has it been so successful? Well, a lot of factors. One is that we have something like an 80 or 90 year history of this. So if we go back to the 1930s, Hewlett-Packard started, and many companies started after World War II and so on. And then these companies had successes, and they started other companies. So now there are 3 generations of entrepreneurs here. And what entrepreneurs do when they're successful is they love to mentor new entrepreneurs. So we have a very deep deep group of mentors who can help new companies, and that's an essential ingredient for company success, startups. So that's one thing. We have a tremendous university system that generates technology and ideas. So not just the University of California, both Berkeley and San Francisco, also Stanford and and other universities in the area, but primarily those are well known for the quality of their science, and their scientists are always coming up with new ideas. We have clinicians, as does Stanford. They have ideas. So we have a very rich, deep well of ideas that bubble up out of universities. And then we have the infrastructure that encourages these ideas. So not only do we have mentors, we have accelerators and incubators and classes and venture capital and angel investors. So there are funding sources and there's educational sources, and a huge thing is the network. So here, and it's not like this in every country, but here it's very more than even respected that you want to do a startup after university. It's encouraged. And in many other countries, that's really not considered a good thing to do, and might even be an embarrassment to your family if you don't succeed. And we have this culture as like, okay, if you're going to fail, a lot of these startups fail. That's fine. Fail early. Understand what you did wrong, learn from this, and go do another one. And so there's no shame in failing. And so I think that's also a big factor.
Yes, we know, because, for example, here in Italy, about failure, company failure, we have a sort of stigma. So, okay, it sometimes happens, but it depends why and when, okay, but we have really a sort of cultural stigma that doesn't allow us maybe culturally to be a serial entrepreneur. So we are at the beginning of a movement that is already steady and growing there in Silicon Valley and in other US areas, but especially there, because many startups from here, they have the myth to come, and sometimes they succeed. I mean, for example, Kong, which is a startup founded by Italians there, and now is a unicorn. So the chance is there. It's not easy. We know it's not so easy. So how, for example, if I were a startup that want to come there in the Silicon Valley, what is the advice, or 2 or 3 advice that you can share with us about this issue?
Well, at first, we have a totally different culture. And I really understand your culture in Italy. It's not just Italy, it's many countries around the world where failure is considered a black mark. And just to finish on that topic, we used to have a conference here called FailCon, Failure Conference, that people would get up and tell their stories about how they failed, and they'd get lots of applause about, yeah, I did this wrong, but now, I figured this out, and I shut down the company, and now I'm doing something different. So anyway, it's in our culture. Everyone understands here that something like 95% of startups aren't going to make it. And so that's just part of the calculus that people put when they invest and when they try things. So I think your question was, what's my advice? Well, one piece of advice which I give to entrepreneurs here and every place is you have to figure out the market first. If you don't have market demand, if you're not answering a big problem, you will fail. There's no success in creating a technology and then pushing it out into a market that doesn't really want it. So you have to start with the market. And I'll tell you a story because I'm teaching right now, and I have people from 18 countries in my class. And I did office hours yesterday with a man from a European country, I won't name it. And he's very excited because he plans to move to Silicon Valley. And he said, I've got everything in place. I've got the company set up. I've got engineers working on the product. He said, the one thing I don't have is a really good understanding of the market. And I said to him, wait a minute, you did this backwards. What was the point in building a device to do something and you have no idea whether the market values it or wants to pay for it? So that's a mistake that's made in technical scientific circles all the time. And so my best advice to everyone is don't come here until you've figured out that you are answering a big problem. And that has a definition, what big is in dollars, if you want to attract venture capital. Don't come unless you know that your solution addresses a very big problem and people would kill to buy it if it were only available. That's so yeah, that number one piece of advice. And you can do that work from any place in the world and go talk to the market and do 100 interviews in your target market. If it's in the United States, do it here. If it's in Europe, do it there. But get that right, or everything else will be wrong.
Yes, because the number one failure motivation is no market need.
Right, exactly.
And the second or the third is run out of cash.
Yeah, you've seen the same study that we always cite, right? But there is also team in the middle of that. So yes, team problems. So
exactly. Yes,
what investors look for is market need, a good sizable market, a team that's going to be able to figure things out when things go sideways. And technology is on that list, but it's maybe down number 4. Because they figure if you get the technology wrong, then the team will figure out what to do and fix it.
Yes, but also because it's not only a matter of technologies. In many startups, okay, technology is an enabler of a new business model, a new way to do maybe also old things, no? So is also a game, what we call the game changers in some sectors. So, and since you mentioned the teams, is there any I mean, something that investors, especially there, or corporates that address, for example, want to buy or to collaborate with startups, but especially investor, what do they see apart the fact that it's not just a one person company, but there is a team? Which are the main characteristics that usually Silicon Valley investor looking for in teams?
Well, of course, they want to see qualifications. So, and here, something that is a what's the right way to say this? The very beginning of qualifications is your degrees and where they come from. So it's very reassuring to an investor. It's like, oh, they came out of Stanford or they came out of Berkeley or UCSF. We know those schools, we know it's quality. So that's sort of an underlying factor. But then if they really look for team dynamics and interrelationships and if people have worked together for a while in a different company, that's a good thing. That shows they can work together. They don't have to have, though. They could have met, say, a lot of people met in one of my courses and then started a company, and then they have good working relationship because they've had to work on the project in the class. So investors are looking for, are these people, first of all, are they qualified? Can they, do they look like they get along well and that there's a good dynamic among them? Let's say there are 3 of them. And then, how are they going to be able to be flexible and responsive to changes in the situation? So are they very rigid and they're going to just follow the path that they've predefined? Or are they going to be able to
adapt and pivot and do pivot, etc.? Yes, because be flexible and understand where always also to change the way you are doing some things to protect the business or to address something new that could be more interesting. So this is a quality that is being addressed. And always about the Silicon Valley, do you think? Because from this perspective, we act really different, but that's also a value, I think, in a global market. Each country and each region has its own approach to innovation. So it's not just a matter of a big investment, but also which kind of impact. And do you think that now the Silicon Valley ecosystem is addressing specifically some issue, or there are some investment trends that are more attractive and some project or technologies that now are under the eye of the investment there?
Well, sure, things go in and out of vogue. So if I just talk about, let's say, therapeutics, a couple of years ago, and actually I think it was in 2017, I had a team in my class that was working on CAR T, which is an immuno-oncology approach. And it was very exciting, and they got some investment from really top-tier investors, some of the corporate venture capitalists as well as others. And they've gone along and they're doing well, but CAR T is no longer in. So a new CAR T company coming along now probably wouldn't get very much interest. On the other hand, if you're working in CRISPR, the new gene editing technology, it's very hot. And so almost anyone working in CRISPR with a decent story and surrounded by good people can get in lots of investment. So things go in and out. And
like it's fashion, so you have
it's fashion. Yeah,
it's fashion. This year is more CRISP is more fashionable than CAR T that is already settled up, and so it's something new, but not so new in a investment point, from an investment point of view. And yes, because maybe I think also that when you are a big investor, you have also to anticipate something that in future will create value. Is not now, but is I put some money in something that is going to grow and create a new value or be a game changer in the next 2-3 years.
Yes, a lot of venture capitalists have teams that do that, just that. They try to figure out what the trends will be, where things are going, and then they try to invest into those trends or create companies themselves. So that's a trend that we're seeing here in the Valley. Is there are a lot of venture capitalists who are not investing in teams that come to them with an idea, maybe some IP, maybe even some mouse studies if you're doing a therapeutic. But they might say, we like this science. They go and find some science at a UCSF or Stanford or wherever, and then they have their own team inside the venture firm that acts as the initial management to put the company together and then bring in the people who will eventually run it. But initially, they're running it and they're creating the value. And so that's how they can play in some emerging trend rather than just investing in some faculty member at a university.
This is what we call the venture building. So the new trend within the startup trend is that, but it is something that we are seeing even here, maybe on another dimension now, but is something very interesting because is creating from scratch in a very trendy and specific sector, industry or scientific trend, a company that is going to address these kind of things without looking for something in the market. Yes, okay, then you do some benchmark and understand if there is something already ready. But anyway, so you confirm to me that this venture capital, venture firm, venture building is the new trend that the Silicon Valley is addressing.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it, they're reducing their risk. Instead of investing in some unknown scientists, they have their own team that can access scientists and put it together, people they've worked with before and they've trusted and maybe built other companies for them. So not every venture capitalist is doing this, but a number of them are, and I see it growing.
Maybe especially that there isn't a specific industry in which this trend is growing, or is more or less in many industries. I mean, for example, in healthcare, more than just in a technology, for example, machine learning or artificial intelligence is more addressing industries. So.
Yeah, I actually don't know the statistical answer to that. I see it, I focus on healthcare, and I see it here. You know, healthcare has completely different characteristics than building a tech company. So if I had to guess, I would say that it's more prevalent here in healthcare. Just because of its unique set of characteristics. Whereas if you're starting a tech company, well, you just need some people to code basically, or do AI, machine learning, et cetera. And that's less risky than to try to develop a drug or a digital therapeutic or something else.
Yes, also because investment are on in healthcare, especially in therapeutics, and are longer. So you have a long time before seeing the light of the product and or see the approval from FDA there or IFA in Europe or globally. So the investment is something that starts today, but is going to give birth to products maybe in 6, 10, 15 years. It depends on what you're addressing. So
yeah, you can even look.
Reduce, so now this trend is seen in order to reduce the investment risk. Sure,
because you have control of the people.
Everything, yeah.
And remember,
everything.
Team is so important. So, and it's a way for them to get exactly what they want. They don't have to go convince some academic scientists that they should be focusing on something that they're not that interested in. It's not to say the old way of doing things or the prevalent way of doing things is gone. And in no way is that true. This is just a small percentage of new deals that are getting done are these company creation, or as you call venture building. But there's still many deals that get done that are a team of scientists or sometimes clinicians who have an idea, and maybe they have some sort of proof of concept and some IP, and they can go out and try to find funding.
Yes, also because as you really know, because you own this masterclass on entrepreneurship for life sciences and healthcare startups. So you teach scientists or people with ideas or IP coming from the academia to build up their business. Is correct?
Yes, and it's broader than just academia, by the way. We have people who are running tech transfer in other countries, and people in corporations who really want to do a startup, and people already doing startups who want to benchmark on what we do in Silicon Valley. So they think if they take this class, they'll have a good feeling for how they're doing compared to how we typically do things. So it's really quite a diverse audience, and but certainly a big dose of scientists and clinicians who have an idea and want to have bigger impact than they can working in a lab or treating patients.
Yes, I know it's very important also because on my little side, I was involved as a teacher or mentor in a masterclass during this year from an university in Spain, and with the aim to bring people from science, from academia, PhD, and so on, and teach them or allow them to understand what building a company is, what building a business is not just the technology, but is understanding, first of all, the market, for example, is understanding how a company could be run, understanding how to act in this ecosystem. So comes out from the laboratories and go out in the world and see, I have a good idea, okay, I have a technology, I have an EP, but then it is not an immediate, immediately, it doesn't become a unicorn immediately, or anyway, a good business immediately. So there is a long way to go.
It's a huge learning for people, and I can appreciate that if you are wrapped up in your idea, your science, or device idea, whatever, that you're not trained to look at the business, you don't have a recognition of how important the business side of things is. And it's only if you go through a class like mine, which gives exposure to all the elements, what's the opportunity? How big is it? What's the business model? What about IP, and how do you deal with it? Is it important? When do you file it? And then things like, how do you build the team, and what should you look for in building a team? And then practical things like regulatory, how do you deal with FDA or EMEA, wherever you may be. and how early should you figure that out, and who's going to pay for it, and how does that all work, and how do you get reimbursement? So all of these things are things that we're teaching. And then also, actually this week we're doing angels, how they work, how they think, what they're looking for, and then we'll do venture capital and partnering. So, I mean, these are all hugely important parts of building a company. It's business, not science. And, you know, but without it, you're not going to succeed, with very rare exceptions. So it's to everybody's benefit to go educate themselves about what's really involved in starting a company, and how can you be in that 5 to 10% that succeeds and not in the 90 to 95% that doesn't make it because you didn't figure out the market need. There's no value proposition that people will pay for.
Yeah, that's true. And especially coming to your masterclass, because we met digitally a few months ago, and you were in promoting, we start understanding if we could do something together. So the idea in future could be also to have a sort of connection and understanding how to present, and for example, for Italian entrepreneur in life science and healthcare startups, maybe creating a sort of bridge and with you and this program. But anyway, can you tell us more about the masterclass, how you run this program, how it's made this, and which are the main elements that are that the takeaways that you have when you go through this program?
Well, thank you for asking that, because this is my baby. I created it last year in the pandemic, and to date we've had 3 cohorts, and we're in the 3rd cohort. We've had over 300 people in it from 5 continents, and this just started from scratch, from an idea in my head. So how does it work? It's 10 weeks. Since everybody is pretty much a professional, we have a few students, but they're people in professional jobs, we structured it so that people who don't have a lot of time during the week or during their job, they can watch it later on in video. But we do the classes live, and there's a lot of Q&A. We do it so that 50% of the time it's a good time for Europe, 50% of the time it's good for Asia, and we hope the US will fall in the middle someplace. We do guest lectures. We have something like, I'm trying to think of it, 17 guest lecturers from Silicon Valley. So people who are, it's not an academic class. This is a very pragmatic, here's how you do it kind of class, and the guest lecturers are people who are doing it. They're entrepreneurs, serial entrepreneurs, CEOs, venture capitalists, regulatory consultants, intellectual property attorneys, and so on. So people in real life doing these real things, and they're coming to spend an hour and a half a week with my class to teach them. And then in addition to these lectures, we have small groups that meet every week. This week we're meeting in sector forums. So we split up the life science healthcare world into 4 sectors: digital health, therapeutics, diagnostics, and devices. And then here's a chance to meet with other people who have an interest in that sector. And the groups are led by mentors who are experts, who are working in the sector. So they're, you know, for instance, I have a diagnostics guy coming in who's working for Johnson & Johnson in diagnostics business. And then there are people from small companies, that people with just, you know, decades of experience who share that in these small groups. And then it's a chance for the group to get to know each other as well and to interact. And then I have, aside from the sector forums, I have study groups that are focused on topics like fundraising and team building. And then this time we have one called Entrepreneur War Stories. So the man in charge of that brings in entrepreneurs who just talk about, you know, things they did right and things they did wrong and how they felt about it. And so it's a very diverse experience over 10 and a half weeks. We have, we just did an alumni mixer. So now that we have over 200 alumni, we decided it would be good to mix it up with the current cohort, and they met each other in breakout sessions. So I think this class, I know it's unique in the world in terms of the focus on life science, healthcare, entrepreneurship, the amount of interactivity that goes on, and the value of this huge network we're building. So I'm very excited about it, as you probably can tell from the way I'm describing it.
No, yes, we know that, and we didn't succeed anyway because maybe we were too near to the fall edition 2021. But how many editions are you going to run in next year? Just only one or two?
I think just one, and but I'm also able to, hopefully with the COVID situation improving, come over to Italy or some other country and just teach a special smaller class for a group of people who are local.
This could be great. You know, we will be we would like to establish. That's why we are here. This connection, also because we believe that it is something we do need, or in startup is needed, especially when they comes from the academia or the scientific field. So to understand how to build up the company, how to address some issue, how to do the things in the right way. Anyway, we cannot mitigate any risk, but anyway, if you comes out and you know how to run the company and how to build up, and also is a great chance to do networking and to be among peers and talk about issue that will come later, maybe useful, and who knows. So the idea could be as soon as we can meet here and in Gravity, we would like to, that's why we established this connection, is also to exchange the experience and maybe create something that could be also a sort of localized edition, or smaller and some classes, but to provide this kind of experience that you bring, and is very, very important.
Well, you know, you're right on, Roberta. It's hugely important that people get exposed to all of this. And, you know, it's lonely being an entrepreneur. If you're sitting there and you don't really know what to do. One of my current students is in Mexico. He's a scientist. He thinks he has a great invention. He's so clueless about business. He tells us that. He says, I'm a scientist. I don't know anything about business. I don't know what to do with this. I think I've got something important. And now we've surrounded him with help, with people who are telling him, no, don't do this on the business side. That's not the right way to proceed. Try this other thing. Here's a connection for you. And so just to have exposure to the network, to people who can help, who've been there before and done this, it takes you out of your little tiny world and puts you into the context of this larger entrepreneurial ecosystem, which, as you know from what you do, is just so important in helping people proceed and be successful in their efforts. And, you know, I'm just a huge believer in the value of entrepreneurship in terms of having impact on the world, in terms of helping a country economically, building more jobs, employing young people. And I'm here to do whatever I can to help. And I would love to pursue this relationship between us and see how I can be helpful to G Gravity and in Italy.
Thank you. And another thing I want to ask, do you have, for example, a short story or something interesting about, for example, projects comes from that's have a good development after your masterclass, or something that's a story from Silicon Valley that you're part of?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. You know, it's a little early for the masterclass to be spinning because we only started it a year ago. Although we just had somebody from the class get into a very important accelerator, Y Combinator, if people have heard of it. It's globally known. They accept 2% of the applicants, and one of our masterclass applicants has now gotten in, so that's a great start. Another one who was looking to just be more connected. He's an MD, a medical doctor, and he wanted to do something in the startup world. And after the masterclass, he got an offer to become chief medical officer of a startup. So he's very excited about that. But let me go back a few more years and talk about some of our successes through my entrepreneurship program, where I put people through a very focused class, different because we were meeting in person and it was not open to the world, and everybody had to be on a team around an idea, and they learned same sort of content from the same type of guest lecturers. And at the end of it, they had a pitch night and they pitched to investors and got feedback that way, not investment because we were too early stage. But some of them pursued the relationships and eventually got some investment out of them. But one of my favorite stories is a company called Enable Biosciences. They have an ultra-sensitive antibody diagnostic. And they were working in, I can't remember what their first indication was. Maybe it was something like, well, I don't remember, but it was not COVID because COVID wasn't around. This company started out of my class in 2015. And the team met each other in the class because I made everybody join a team. So in the very beginning of the class, people would get up and pitch their ideas, and then we'd have a mixer. And out of that mixer, they had to have at least 2 other team members, so a team of 3 for the class. So that happened in this 2015 class, and a man named David Seftel met, and he's an MD, MBA. He met a scientist from UC Berkeley, and together they started on the team, and they found one other person. Well, fast forward to today, and the 3 of them are still together. They started a company. They're doing work for the California Department of Public Health on COVID. They have gotten 11 grants and raised millions of dollars through non-dilutive fundraising. They're about to go out for their Series A in venture capital. I've just made a connection with the US government for them that looks very promising for a big contract. So very proud of this startup that just came out of the class. So that's one story. You want any others? I could give you another one.
I think you are full of very successful stories, and also stories of people, no? Because it's not only the business, it's not only the technology, but it's about people. It's about what we can, how we can help people to follow their ideas and passion. I think that this is a privilege also to work for them and to help them in some ways in creating companies and creating business, and also, as you said, having an impact. Because nowadays, I think that something that we have to care about is environment, is the impact that we have to consider in what we do. So, do you think there is also this attention? Just a few words for closing, since it's a very big issue now. I was in Web Summits last week in Lisbon, and it was an issue very addressed. So sustainability and how we can create business, etc., but also looking at the planet, looking at people. And so how the Silicon Valley is addressing this kind of issue, if it is.
I don't know if I can speak for the whole valley. I mean, there's certainly a lot of interest in the environment and inclusion and diversity and all those kinds of things. And there's a resurgence in what we used to call clean tech, which disappeared. So 10 years ago, people were starting clean tech companies, which were environmentally appropriate companies, but it didn't take off. And so it sort of died away, but it's come back, and it's coming back differently. And you would think that in all the learnings of that decade now, it's a different time and a different understanding of what you need to do to be successful. And there are always, just yesterday, I was talking to a new mentor who's has started a social impact company. It's for profit. He's got $17 million of investment in it, but he is selling diagnostic testing in Africa for sickle cell disease. And he told me why that's so important is because if you can identify it early, you can treat it, and you can treat it with inexpensive drugs. And so he's doing tests that are $1 per test in Africa, and yet he's making money. And so I certainly think there are more people, especially in this millennial generation, who really care about this and are trying to do startups around social issues and such as that. But the good thing about playing where we do, which is in healthcare, is that really anything that we do of value is going to have an impact on the world. We're not doing another app. We're not doing, a game. We're doing something that can change human health. And if you just look at Moderna and BioNTech, these companies were startups 10 years ago, and they've literally saved the world. So I'm hoping that somebody that I can help now is going to do the same thing someday, and then I'll feel like I've had impact, and that matters a lot.
Great, really, really, yes, you're right. It's something that we have to address. So the idea that we startups and maybe with our help are going to change and do something for people. So as like you mentioned, Moderna for vaccine. So this new generation of vaccines that we are now testing by ourselves, because we have been in this very big trial all over the world.
Worldwide trial.
the biggest trial in the world. So it is really an unexpected experience that we are now living. So it is the future, and this wave is accelerating. So let's say the future, what is going to deserve for us, especially if we address in the right way. So
it's an exciting time to be in this business.
Yeah. Okay, so Stephanie, really, I'm very grateful and thank you for the chance to have this conversation. I hope we are going to start working and hope to see you maybe soon here in Milan, and we are going to create the moment and start collaborating, because I think that your great experience could be a great value for G-Gravity and our community, and connected communities is something that we are now doing because it is value for all.
I appreciate the opportunity to speak at your conference, Roberta, and it's been a pleasure to work with you so far, and I'm really looking forward to a much closer collaboration. And Italy is one of my favorite places in the world, so I can't wait to have a genuine cappuccino soon.
Okay, we are here, and so we will provide all the things.
That's wonderful.
Have a nice day, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye, Stephanie. Bye. Bye.